I want to show you something extraordinary. For over 1,000 years, from 550 BCE to 651 CE, an empire stretched from the Mediterranean coast of Egypt, across the deserts, mountains and river valleys all the way to the Indus River in India. This wasn't just another ancient kingdom built on conquest and cruelty. The Persian Empire, through its Achaemenid, Parthian and Sasanian dynasties, invented systems of government so sophisticated that empires copied them for centuries. They built the world's first true superpower, and they did it with roads, tolerance and bureaucracy. Let's find out how. The story begins on the Iranian plateau around 550 BCE. The Persians were originally vassals of the Medes, a powerful kingdom that controlled much of what is now Iran. But then came Cyrus the Great. In just a few decades, Cyrus overthrew the Medes, conquered the wealthy kingdom of Lydia in modern Turkey, and captured Babylon, one of the ancient world's greatest cities. He didn't just conquer, he liberated. When Cyrus took Babylon, he freed the Jews from captivity and let them return home. This wasn't mercy, it was strategy. By respecting local customs and religions, Cyrus turned potential rebels into loyal subjects. His son Cambyses II pushed even further, conquering Egypt in 525 BCE. Now Persia controlled the Nile, the breadbasket that fed empires. To the east, Persian armies reached Gandhara, modern Pakistan and Afghanistan, securing trade routes into India. In less than 30 years, one family had built an empire spanning 3 continents. But conquest is easy compared to what came next, actually running the thing. Darius I, who took power in 522 BCE, faced a problem. How do you govern 44% of the world's population spread across deserts, mountains and jungles? His solution was the Satrapy System. He divided the empire into about 20 provinces, each ruled by a satrap, essentially a regional governor with massive power. They collected taxes, raised armies, and enforced laws. Sounds like a recipe for rebellion, right? That's where the genius comes in. Darius created a system of checks and balances 2,000 years before Montesquieu. Each satrap was watched by a royal secretary who reported directly to the king. Military commanders in each province answered to the king, not the satrap. And then there were the king's eyes and ears, royal inspectors who showed up unannounced to audit everything. One corrupt satrap might steal, but with 3 officials watching each other in surprise inspections, the system held. This wasn't just clever, it was revolutionary. For the first time, an empire this size actually functioned year after year without collapsing into civil war. Information is power, but only if it moves fast. The royal road stretched over 2,500 kilometers from Sardis in Turkey to Susa in Iran. Normally, this journey took 90 days on foot, but Persia built the Angarium, the world's first organized postal system. Relay stations every 25 to 30 kilometers provided fresh horses and riders. A message could travel the entire royal road in just 7 days. That's faster than anything Europe would achieve until the 1800s. This network wasn't just for mail. It moved armies, officials, and trade goods. The roads had bridges, way stations with food and water, and even distance markers. Herodotus, the Greek historian, marveled at it. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor darkness prevents these couriers from completing their appointed rounds. Sound familiar? The US Postal Service borrowed that line. But Persia didn't stop with roads. They built qanats, underground channels that brought water from mountains to dry plains, turning deserts into farmland. Infrastructure wasn't glamorous, but it was the empire's skeleton. Darius didn't just reorganize government, he reinvented the economy. Before him, taxes were chaotic. Some provinces paid in grain, others in livestock, others in gold. Darius standardized everything. Each satrapy owed a fixed annual tribute based on its wealth and population. He introduced standard weights and measures across the empire, so a kilogram in Egypt meant the same thing as a kilogram in Bactria. And then came the money. The daric, a gold coin stamped with the king's image, became the empire's currency. Silver sigloi circulated for everyday purchases. Suddenly, merchants from Athens to India could trade using the same money. Markets monetized, Credit systems emerged. The daric was so trusted that it remained in use for centuries after the Achaemenids fell. Economic historians call this the world's first truly monetized economy at scale. Darius turned tax collection from a messy negotiation into a predictable machine, and that machine funded everything else. Cyrus built Pasargadae, his capital, in the heart of Persia, a city of gardens and palaces that announced a new power. But Darius wanted something bigger. He built Persepolis, a ceremonial city designed to awe. Every spring, representatives from every corner of the empire climbed the grand staircase to present tribute to the king. The walls were carved with processions, Egyptians bringing gold, Bactrians leading camels, Indians with ivory. This wasn't just art, it was a political statement. The message: the whole world bows here. But the real work happened in Susa, the administrative capital on the edge of Mesopotamia. Susa was where the bureaucrats lived, where the archives filled with clay tablets and parchment, where the empire actually ran. Persepolis was the stage, Susa was the engine room. These cities weren't just royal vanity projects, they were tools. They concentrated power, displayed legitimacy, and housed the machinery of government. When Alexander burned Persepolis in 330 BCE, he destroyed a symbol, but the systems kept running. The empire spoke hundreds of languages: Persian, Elamite, Akkadian, Egyptian, Greek, Aramaic, and dozens more. So how did orders from Susa reach a village in Egypt? The answer: Imperial Aramaic. Originally the language of merchants and scribes in Syria, Aramaic became the empire's official administrative language. Every government document, every tax record, every royal decree was written in Aramaic using a standardized script. This was brilliant for two reasons. First, Aramaic was already widespread, so many educated people knew it. Second, by choosing a neutral language, not Persian, the empire avoided linguistic imperialism. A Greek satrap and an Egyptian priest could both use Aramaic without one dominating the other. Scribes became the empire's glue. They translated, recorded, and transmitted. The Persepolis fortification tablets, thousands of clay documents, show this system in action. Ration allocations, travel permits, worker payments, all in Aramaic. Language policy doesn't sound exciting, but it made everything else possible. Religion in Persia was complex. The kings promoted Zoroastrianism, a faith centered on Ahura Mazda, the god of truth and light, locked in cosmic struggle against Angra Mainyu, the spirit of chaos and lies. Fire temples dotted the empire, sacred flames that were never allowed to die. The king wasn't quite a god, but he was Ahura Mazda's chosen representative on earth. Royal inscriptions framed conquest as righteous. Darius brought order to chaos, truth to lies. But here's what made Persia different. They didn't force this on anyone. When Cyrus conquered Babylon, he honored Marduk, the Babylonian god. In Egypt, Persian kings took traditional pharaonic titles and supported local temples. Jews, Greeks, Egyptians, all could worship their own gods as long as they paid taxes and kept the peace. This wasn't modern tolerance, it was pragmatic imperialism. Why provoke rebellions over religion when you can just collect tribute? This policy of religious flexibility kept the empire stable for centuries, while other empires tore themselves apart over doctrine. In 499 BCE, Greek cities in Ionia, the western coast of modern Turkey, revolted against Persian rule. Athens sent ships to help. Big mistake. The Persians crushed the revolt, but Darius didn't forget Athens' interference. In 490 BCE, a Persian fleet landed at Marathon, just 40 kilometers from Athens. Against the odds, the Athenians won. It was a shock. The superpower had been defeated by a single city-state. 10 years later, Darius's son Xerxes tried again, this time with perhaps 100,000 soldiers. At Thermopylae, 300 Spartans and their allies held a narrow pass for 3 days before being outflanked and killed. Xerxes pushed into Greece, burned Athens, and seemed unstoppable. Then came Salamis. In the narrow straits, the Persian fleet, larger but less maneuverable, was destroyed by Greek triremes. Xerxes retreated. These wars didn't end the empire, but they stopped its western expansion. More importantly, they created the Greek narrative of freedom versus tyranny that shaped Western thought for millennia. Persia became the villain in someone else's story. Behind the king stood the vizier, the empire's prime minister, who managed the vast bureaucracy. Below him, scribes, accountants, translators, archivists. The Persepolis archives reveal a staggering level of record-keeping. Every worker's ration, every traveler's permit, every grain shipment, documented. This wasn't paranoia, it was management. You can't run an empire on trust alone. But Persia also understood soft power. The Apadana at Persepolis, the great audience hall, featured reliefs showing the empire's diversity. 23 delegations bringing gifts, each carved in meticulous detail. This was propaganda, but sophisticated propaganda. The message wasn't, "We conquered you." It was, "We are the natural center of the world, and you are honored to participate." Persian art blended styles from across the empire, Egyptian motifs, Babylonian techniques, Greek sculptors. The empire didn't just tolerate diversity, it weaponized it, turning cultural synthesis into a statement of universal rule. An empire is only as strong as its food supply. Persia controlled some of the ancient world's richest agricultural zones: the Nile Delta, Mesopotamia, the Indus Plains. They built on existing systems but improved them. In Egypt, they maintained the irrigation networks that had fed pharaohs for millennia. In Mesopotamia, they repaired canals and expanded farmland. The tribute system ensured grain flowed from surplus regions to deficit ones. Storage was key. Royal granaries in every satrapy held reserves for bad years, military campaigns, and emergencies. This wasn't charity, it was risk management. A starving province is a rebellious province. And here's something surprising. Women held real power in this system. Royal women owned vast estates, employed hundreds of workers, and appear throughout the archives as economic actors. The Persepolis tablets mention women receiving rations, managing land, and traveling on official business. Persia wasn't egalitarian, but elite women had agency that would disappear in later empires. Persia didn't just conquer, it negotiated. The empire maintained a sophisticated diplomatic corps. Envoys traveled constantly, carrying gifts, gathering intelligence, and maintaining relationships. Gift-giving was a language. The value, the item, the timing, all conveyed messages. A gold bracelet meant one thing. A ceremonial weapon meant another. Persia mapped the world not just geographically, but politically, tracking which local elites could be bought, which needed to be intimidated, which were reliable. The western frontier required constant attention. Cyprus, Phoenicia, and the Mediterranean ports were economically vital but politically unstable, caught between Persian and Greek influence. Persia often ruled through local kings and city councils, maintaining a light touch as long as tribute flowed and ships remained available. This wasn't weakness, it was efficiency. Direct rule costs money and lives. Better to let locals govern themselves and skim the profits. This model of indirect rule through client states would be copied by Rome, the Ottomans, and the British Empire. In 334 BCE, a 22-year-old Macedonian king crossed into Asia with 40,000 soldiers. Alexander the Great defeated Persian armies at the Granicus River, then at Issus, where he captured the Persian king's family. Darius III offered peace, half the empire, and his daughter in marriage. Alexander refused. He wanted it all. At Gaugamela in 331 BCE, Alexander crushed the main Persian army. Darius fled and was murdered by his own nobles. Alexander entered Persepolis and, after looting it, burned it to the ground. The Achaemenid Empire was over, but the system survived. Alexander kept the satrapy structure, the roads, the bureaucracy. He even adopted Persian court ceremonies to his Macedonian generals' disgust. When Alexander died just 8 years later, his empire fractured. The Seleucids took control of the eastern territories, ruling from Syria to Afghanistan. They were Greek kings, but they governed like Persians. Satrapies, local autonomy, multilingual administration. The empire had changed hands, but its DNA persisted. Around 247 BCE, a group of semi-nomadic warriors from the Central Asian steppes moved into northeastern Iran. These were the Parthians, led by the Arsacid dynasty. They were brilliant cavalrymen. Their tactic of feigning retreat, then turning in the saddle to shoot arrows backward, became legendary, the Parthian shot. Over decades, they pushed out the Seleucids and rebuilt a Persian empire, though a looser one. Rome, expanding eastward, soon collided with Parthia. At Carrhae in 53 BCE, Parthian cavalry annihilated 7 Roman legions, killing the general Crassus. Rome never forgot. For centuries, the two empires fought over Mesopotamia and Armenia, neither able to decisively defeat the other. But they also traded. The Silk Roads, networks of caravan routes connecting China to the Mediterranean, ran right through Parthian territory. Parthia grew rich as the middleman, taxing caravans and controlling oasis cities. Chinese silk, Indian spices, Persian carpets, all flowed through Parthian hands. War and commerce, intertwined as always. In 224 CE, a Persian noble named Ardashir overthrew the last Parthian king and founded the Sasanian Empire. This was a revolution. Where the Parthians had been decentralized with powerful noble families, Ardashir centralized everything. He claimed descent from the Achaemenids and set out to restore their glory. His son, Shapur the Fur, took things further. In 260 CE, Shapur did something no one had done before or since. He captured a Roman emperor in battle. Valerian was taken prisoner and spent his remaining years in Persia, reportedly used as a footstool when Shapur mounted his horse. Propaganda? Maybe. But the message was clear. Persia was back, and Rome should be afraid. Shapur expanded the empire east and west, and commissioned rock reliefs showing his victories. The Sasanians didn't just want to rule, they wanted everyone to know they ruled. The greatest Sasanian ruler was Khosrow, who reigned from 531 to 579 CE. Known as Anushirvan, the immortal soul, Khosrow reformed the tax system, replacing unpredictable levies with a fixed land tax based on surveys and crop yields. This made revenue predictable and reduced corruption. He standardized weights and measures again, repaired infrastructure, and patronized scholars. His court became a center of learning. When Justinian closed the philosophical schools in Athens in 529 CE, Greek philosophers fled to Persia, where Khosrow welcomed them. Works of Greek science and philosophy were translated into Middle Persian and Syriac. The Academy of Gunda Shapur became famous for medicine, astronomy, and mathematics. Indian numerals and texts reached Persia and were later transmitted to the Arab world and Europe. Khosrow's Persia was a bridge between civilizations, preserving and transmitting knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. This wasn't just military power, it was intellectual power. The Sasanian capital was Ctesiphon, on the Tigris River just south of modern Baghdad. The city's centerpiece was the Takht Khosrow, a massive vaulted hall, the largest single-span brick arch in the world. This was where the king held court, sitting on the Takhti Takhdis, the throne of arches, beneath a ceiling reportedly decorated with jewels arranged as stars and planets. Ctesiphon was a sprawling metropolis. Markets, workshops, palaces, fire temples, and residential districts for merchants from across the known world. Chinese traders, Indian merchants, Roman envoys, Arab caravan leaders, all did business here. The city was a microcosm of the empire, diverse, wealthy, and organized. Zoroastrian fire temples coexisted with Christian churches and Jewish synagogues. The Sasanians, like the Achaemenids before them, understood that religious diversity was a fact, not a problem. Ctesiphon stood as proof that a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire could thrive, until it couldn't. Under the Sasanians, Zoroastrianism became a state religion with a powerful priestly class, the Magi. They maintained fire temples, performed rituals, and advised kings. But the empire also had large Christian, Jewish, and Buddhist minorities, especially in Mesopotamia and the East. Sasanian policy oscillated, sometimes tolerant, sometimes persecuting, depending on the king and political circumstances. The Sasanian military was formidable. Cataphracts, heavily armored cavalry on armored horses, were the empire's shock troops, supported by archers and infantry. War elephants, imported from India, served as ancient tanks. The empire built defensive lines, the Wall of the Arabs in the south, fortifications in the Caucasus against northern nomads. Meanwhile, Gunda Shapur's medical school trained physicians in surgery, pharmacology, and anatomy. Trade with India brought spices, pearls, and textiles, with the Red Sea ports, frankincense and myrrh. Persia was a crossroads, militarily powerful and economically vibrant. By the early 600s CE, the Sasanian and Byzantine empires had fought each other for so long they were both exhausted. The wars had devastated Mesopotamia, drained treasuries, and killed hundreds of thousands. Then came plague, sweeping through both empires and weakening them further. In 628 CE, after years of chaos, the Sasanians and Byzantines finally made peace. Both empires were broke, their armies depleted, their populations traumatized. This was the moment Arab armies emerged from the Arabian Peninsula, united under the banner of Islam. At the Battle of Qadisiyah in 636 CE, Arab forces defeated a Sasanian army. At Nahavand in 642 CE, they crushed the remaining Sasanian resistance. The last Sasanian king, Yazdegerd III, fled east and was murdered in 651 CE. The empire that had lasted in one form or another for over 1,000 years was gone. The Arab caliphates now ruled from Egypt to Central Asia, but they inherited Persian administrative systems, kept Persian bureaucrats, and absorbed Persian culture. The Persian Empire fell, but its systems never died. The Abbasid Caliphate, which ruled from Baghdad starting in 750 CE, copied the Sasanian model almost entirely. Satrapies became provinces. The vizier system continued. The postal roads kept running. Persian became the language of administration and high culture across the Islamic world for centuries. The Mongols, Ottomans, and Mughals all studied Persian governance and borrowed from it. But the legacy goes deeper. The idea that an empire could be diverse, that it could rule through law and administration rather than just force, that infrastructure and communication matter as much as armies. These were Persian innovations. The concept of a professional bureaucracy, standardized taxation, and religious tolerance as policy. All Persian. Even the Persian garden, the Paradise, from which we get the word paradise, influenced Islamic, Mughal, and European garden design. When you see a formal garden with water channels and symmetry, you're looking at a Persian idea. The empire ended in 651 CE, but its ghost shaped the world for another 1,000 years, and in ways subtle and profound, it still does. From Cyrus to the fall of the Sasanians, the Persian Empire lasted over 11 centuries, ruled perhaps 44% of humanity at its peak, and pioneered systems of government that empires still study today. It wasn't perfect, no empire is, but it proved that size and diversity aren't weaknesses if you build the right structures. Roads, coins, tolerance, and bureaucracy. These were Persia's weapons, and they worked. The next time you mail a letter, pay taxes, or see a government official, you're participating in systems that Persia helped invent. That's a legacy worth remembering.